Hello, good afternoon, everyone. And for those who are watching us from different time zones, good morning or good evening, wherever you may be. And of course, for those who are first time in this platform or who's watching us for the first time, my name is Marilyn. I'm the CEO and founder of Customized Training Solutions Private Limited or CTS. And we are Asia's most trusted training and business solutions partner. We create programs that adds value and impact for leaders to stay relevant, adapt to the next normal, and ensure performance of a hybrid team. And our mission is to be able to inspire sustainable transformation by empowering leaders through customized learning solutions that drives outcomes and impact. We have served over 5,000 leaders from over 30 countries in different industries, including Petronas, Sony Mobile, Ayala Group, Meralco, Aboitiz, Manila Hotel, and other companies such as Shell, to name a few. And today, it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest. He's also an entrepreneur. And RJ Ledesma is the co-founder of Mercato Central Philippines, the largest and most popular night food market and small food business incubator ecosystem in the Philippines. Under RJ's leadership, Mercato won the 2019 Asia CEO Awards Small and Medium Enterprise Company of the Year award and the 2019 Philippine winner of the Asian Business Awards for SME Excellence in Innovation. Oh, plus one more, sorry. 2019 Asia Leaders Awards SME Company of the Year. He's a sought after speaker on entrepreneurship, disruption and innovation, and brand marketing. Serves as an entrepreneur, mentor with the Philippine Center for Entrepreneurship or PCE, also known as Go Negosyo, and is a member of the Association of the Filipino Franchisers Incorporated and the Philippine Franchise Association. Without so much further ado, I'd like to invite RJ. Hi, RJ.
Hi, Marilyn. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it. Hi to all of the people watching us here live from the Philippines and from all over the world. Maraming salamat. Thanks so much to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, RJ, for um, giving us some time to be here with us today. And for those who are watching us live or on a replay, join us in this conversation by sharing your takeaways from this conversation or even questions, more questions for RJ, right, on this conversation. So, to start with, I mean, I have introduced you.
Mhm.
But I'm not so sure if I have justified whatever you have done with the work that you have been doing
Mhm.
as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, a mentor, as well as I know that you're a TV host, commercial model, an
Mhm.
actor as well, and so give us like more information on who you
Oh,
are,
okay.
you
So,
do your
so,
experience as well.
so I often tell people I wear many hats. I wish I had just as many heads. So uh, I've gone from corporate to media to entrepreneurship to even publishing. So just to give you a bit of a background of what I do,
Mhm,
no. So the first hat that I used to wear is my first professional training. I
mhm,
really came from Procter and Gamble. I was
mhm,
a senior assistant brand manager at Procter and Gamble. That's where I started getting my background in management and marketing fundamentals.
mhm,
And then after that one, I did my master's in real estate development at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology (MIT) because my
mhm,
family business is into real estate development.
mhm,
But my dad, before real estate, was an entrepreneur at heart, so he sort of passed on that entrepreneurial gene to me. No,
mhm,
so I've run several businesses basically.
mhm,
One of them is Mercato Central,
mhm,
which is my night food business and small food business incubator. For those of you out of Singapore, it's like I manage the hawker markets here in the Philippines. So that's really what I did. And I was actually inspired by the hawker markets in the Philippines, and I wanted to translate that experience here to the Philippines. No, and then the second thing that I also did put up with a couple of co-founders is that I have a business called Easy Franchise. It's a platform that helps businesses use franchising as a growth strategy here in the Philippines. And this is
mhm,
very interesting. Later on, we're going to get into this discussion as to how I come up with businesses. But what really inspired me to start off with Mercato with Easy Franchise was that one time I was giving a motivational speech uh, to our overseas Filipino workers in Dubai, and beside me and giving the talk alongside me was a water refiller franchisor. Somebody was offering a water refilling franchise in the Philippines. And when she asked who wants to become a franchisor, a franchisee, and there was a sea of hands which were raised up. Apparently, many of them wanted to get their own franchise because they realized that their contracts were not forever over there. And when they got back home, they wanted to make sure that there was a business waiting for them instead of, when they come back home, all their money has disappeared, right? But the second thing also is that one of the people there asked them, in attendance, asked the owner of the franchise, who's going to run the business for me while I'm not around, while I'm still here in Dubai? And, she had a lack of answers that were satisfactory to the attendees because she said, maybe you can give it to your relatives or to your close family friends. But as we know from the, unfortunate OFW, overseas Filipino worker experience, is that if you give it to a relative or a family or to a family friend or a family friend to run it, they might run it to the ground because they don't have the skill set to run it, nor do they might not have your best interests at heart. So that's what came up with that's the idea that gave birth to the idea of Easy Franchise. Is that number one is we help people who want to be able to turn their businesses into a franchise. We provide them with the proper framework to do that one. And on the other end, for people who want to invest in a franchise but don't have the skill set nor the time to run it, we professionally manage that franchise for them, that franchise outlet for them. So that's what Easy Franchise was about. And then the other business which I have also as well is called, and I'm very happy to share it over here, it's called Enter PH. Enter PH is a company that helps foreign businesses set up shop here in the Philippines, meaning many companies want to outsource, offshore, or do a business in the Philippines because usually when you outsource a business over here to the Philippines, it's 30% the value of what you do in other countries, right? Exactly, that's what many BPOs do. They do the business here in the Philippines because it's just 30% of what they can do. It costs them 30 cents to $1 if they did the business here, if they did a business in the States. So, for example, why do people continue to choose the Philippines? We're one of the biggest destinations for BPOs. Why do they still like us? Because number one, we have a large English-speaking workforce, many college graduates, easily trainable, familiar with Western culture. So what we realized over here, the pain point over here that we realized was that many of these large businesses which want to come in and take advantage of the benefits of that's the one of the nice things about working at home. The perils also of working at home. But anyway, what you have over here is that there are many large companies that come meet with large consulting firms to help establish their businesses. But there are also many micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs abroad, that want to take advantage but find these costs of working with these large corporations too prohibitive. So our job is to solve the pain point of these smaller companies that want to take advantage of working here in the Philippines. And that's basically what we do. We set up a company to help smaller businesses or MSMEs from abroad to set up shop here in the Philippines. And it's a growing market for two things, whether they want to outsource businesses over here to the Philippines, because there are many businesses out of Singapore. I'm sure you're aware of this one, Marilyn, that the office is in Singapore, but the people doing the work are in the Philippines. So it's like you're sending the work over here, but then they send all the work to the Philippines, they do the work, and they send it back to the Singapore office. So that's basically what happens. They take advantage of the lower labor costs over there. At the same time, they're looking now at the Philippines. That's right, that's how Easy Franchise is spelled. At the same time, the Philippines is a large market here right now. I mean, we have 110 million people living here in the Philippines. So many people are looking at it as a legitimate market now to grow. I mean, we're second to Indonesia in terms of size, and Indonesia by itself is a large market. And Philippines is already coming up in terms of being a very large market that people want to tap. So a lot of companies coming in here as well. So those are my hats as far as being an entrepreneur is concerned. There's Mercato Central, which is the largest night food market in the country. There's Easy Franchise, and there's Enter PH. So on top of that one, I'm also the editor-in-chief of a online digital business publication called the Business Manual. And in the Business Manual, what I do for the Business Manual is that we feature the success stories of pioneering business leaders, trailblazing entrepreneurs who want to, and their stories serve as an inspiration to
Mhm.
future generations of entrepreneurs, because the purpose of the magazine is to engage, to inspire, to motivate people. And that's exactly what we've been doing. So we've got really great stories. Our first, just very recently, we're coming up, our November cover is Riza Pascua, very famous female entrepreneur. She does all the live entertainment shows in the Philippines. She does Live Nation. Before that, Buds Wenceslao, who is the 40, I think he's a 43-year-old CEO of DM Wenceslao, one of the largest land reclamation owners here in the country, in the Philippines. So, so that's what I do. I'm also, because of my background in publishing. So, my background is that basically, aside from publishing, I also wrote for 10 years for the Philippine Star, which is one of the Philippines' largest newspapers. I was a humor columnist. I produced 6 best-selling books. They're best-selling because my mom bought most of those books. And I'm also a National Book Awards finalist. So I have a bit of a background in writing. I'm a 3-time National Book Awards finalist. I am a writing fellow, which means I was chosen by the University of the Philippines to be a writing fellow, and Silliman University in the Visayas to also be a writing fellow for them. So I have a writing background here as well, which transitions naturally into doing publication work. And like you said, I'm also an online personality. When I was younger, I used to be a model for an orange soft drink here in the Philippines, and now I'm a pretty sought after host, particularly when it comes to the fields of business events. And also, I'm a well known host for weddings here in the Philippines, interestingly enough. So, like I said, I wear many hats. So it's host, motivational speaker where I talk about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial mindset. So it's as a host, as a motivational speaker, as an editor, as a writer, uh, as an entrepreneur also at the same time. And lastly, one of the hats I wear is as the honorary consul of Monaco to the Philippines, which means that uh, myself, together with my mom, she was the consul general of Monaco to the Philippines. We represent the Principality of Monaco here in the Philippines. So many different hats. I wish I had just, as many different heads at the same time. The secret is to have 3 clones at home. So I have 3 clones managing the different businesses.
Wow, that's really amazing. I mean, that shows how versatile you are and also like how talented you are in the work that you do. I mean, that's like totally different kinds of things that you do. But I mean, like when you're very enthusiastic and you'd like to help people, right, and solve problems for others, similar to your story, when you actually attended an event in Dubai, helping OFWs, right? I mean, that's the usual challenge. I'm also here in Singapore, and definitely we would like to help more Filipinos to sustain how they can
Exactly.
actually earn a living as well. And hopefully in the future, not having to leave their family as well, right?
That's right.
In
And
to
exactly what
money.
you're talking about over here. The question that runs in the bottom: how do you stay relevant and adapt in the new normal, and how do you make sure it's relevant for OFWs? And over the years, like I was sharing in the talk which I gave yesterday together with Maryland's team, is that you know what? When I look at the common denominators of the most successful entrepreneurs,
Mhm,
is that they have what you call that, like I call the entrepreneurial mindset, and
mhm,
basically what that entrepreneurial mindset just means is that it's the ability for you to identify that problems are just pain points or opportunities to create
mhm,
business, right? So that's what I often call it. Diba? I often say, I'm a host, right? And I host many pitching competitions for startups. I've hosted for the
mhm,
government. I've hosted for Ignite. So I've heard so many pitches before in the past, and always in all these pitches, where the tech startup companies are coming there to pitch, always the first question that any of the judges will ask the startups which are pitching on stage. I mean, what problem are you trying to solve? That's basically it. Like I said, if there's anything you take away with this one, is that what problem are you trying to solve? Each of my businesses was always there to solve a problem, right? If you
mhm,
look at, that's the overarching theme, diba? If you look at Mercato Central, the reason we came up with that in the first place was because, um, you know, I'm a media guy, and before I got sent to Singapore and to Thailand and to Taiwan to do what they call media tours, to write about the place for the publications that I worked for. And when I would go there, I was so impressed by their night food markets, because what a great, it's a great culture, diba? And people go eat there, both the foreigners and locals. It's safe. It's preferably sanitized, and it's a destination market. I was saying, how come in the Philippines we don't have an equivalent of a night food market over here? Despite the fact that Filipinos have black holes for stomachs, we eat any time of the day. But more than that one, is that there are many BPO workers, meaning business process outsourcing workers. Their lunchtime begins at about 11 p.m. at night. Where can they find good sustenance or good food at night? Not just the fried chicken from the convenience store, right? So that really gave birth to the idea of creating Mercado Central. It was solving a pain point. Same thing
Mm-hmm.
for when we came up with the idea of easy franchise. It was solving a pain point for OFWs. Really, that was just the first initial idea. How do we create business for them? Enter PH was the same thing. How do we solve the pain points of these medium-sized companies that want to come to the Philippines but find the costs of doing business with the larger consulting firms more prohibitive? So really, everything comes from what are the pain points, and then when you solve that initial pain point, it doesn't mean that it's always correct, but it means that you're at the starting point, and sort of what they always say, in other words, people have gone through this statement many, many times, and it might sound overused. But the idea is that, you pivot, so this is the first pain point, and as you get into the situation, you find other things that you solve. You iterate on what you have to solve along the way, because what Mercato is right now wasn't what the Mercato was when we started it about 12 years ago. Easy Franchise isn't the same business model that we had 6 years ago when we thought about it, and same thing for Enter PH.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's what entrepreneurship mindset is, right? Being able to not only solve pain points, but also to think about what else we can do, right, to help. And again, like you've mentioned in your earlier story, how you actually get to be serial entrepreneur yourself, right? You've mentioned about your father as also an entrepreneur. So I'm just curious to know who else have actually influenced you to where you are right now and why you're doing what you're doing, and if there's a leadership like style that you actually a favorite leadership style that
Yeah,
you um like how you lead your people, and probably how you actually define leadership is now,
yeah,
what would it be?
got that. So I need to define several things. First of all, what I realize, I know my core strength. My core strength is sort of like problem solving, thinking of ideas,
Mhm,
uh, uh, idea creation, business idea ideation, developing a strong network. And I often tell people that your network is your net worth, particularly as a leader or somebody who's an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, your job is to sort of say, how can
mhm,
I? It's like I host so many different things. I'm exposed to so many different businesses. So my
mhm,
job is to be a sponge and absorb all these different things. Because as you absorb those things, you realize, okay, what are the different problems there? What's the biggest problem? What is the problem? You start ideas start sparking for you. Then when that
mhm,
happens for you, is that you start realizing, okay, those ideas are happening. Now, how do you use that network of contacts that you've developed over the years to sort of find ways to solve that problem? So that's the first thing I want to point out, that
mhm,
uh, first of all, it's more sort of like what I understand, how it's like to be an entrepreneur. Um, my dad began as an entrepreneur. He was
mhm,
successful in some businesses, not successful in others, but he planted the seed. He raised us in an entrepreneurial background. And I
mhm,
remember very clearly he would use say before, I said, that what if I get into, doing movies? So my dad would tell me, instead of being the actor in the movie, be the one who owns the movie studio, right? So then you can still act in your movies, but you own the studio. So it's, okay, that was sort of what he was putting into my head as I was growing up to think like an entrepreneur, right? And then after that one, no, um, what I think is very important, especially if you become an entrepreneur, is that
mhm,
it's not one clear cut path. It's not like you're working inside a company and there's a
mhm,
mentor for you there. You really have to search for your mentors here in entrepreneurship. I often talk about the idea of hustling as an entrepreneur. You're out there looking for business. You also have to be out there looking for mentors. So that happens for me. Like for me, where I'm very, very, very grateful that in my own company we have two very strong mentors. my wife, Consul Vanessa Ledesma, she's also a consul. She's a consul of
Mhm.
Montenegro, the Philippines. Um, when her background was not in entrepreneurship initially, but she had an entrepreneurial gene from the family, but she didn't have management training. So she actually did a master's of entrepreneurship in the Ateneo Center for Entrepreneurship, and she
Mhm.
did very, very well. And as a result, we were able to bring on board one of her professors, Professor Andy Ferreria, who's the president of the Ateneo Center for Entrepreneurship, to be one of our mentors for the company. And he provided great mentorship for us over the years. So uh, especially during the pandemic, he helped us through very many sticky situations during the pandemic and helped us make out of the hard calls that we had to do. Similarly, the other mentor that we have was Jose Jomag Magsaysay. He's the co-founder of Potato Corner, who's also one of the advisors and also one of the co-investors in my business Mercado Central. So, they provided great mentorship for me as we moved along the path. And we're not saying it's always correct, but the thing is, every business has its own unique sets of idiosyncrasies. And it's not a one size fits all. I came from Procter and Gamble, which is a very it's very structured company, just really great. But when you leave it, it's a totally different environment, and you can't, sometimes it doesn't operate on the same principles. Large corporations operate from different principles from an entrepreneurial organization, so it's not the
Mhm.
same thing. So if you were to pursue entrepreneurship as a career, you really have to get mentors who are also good entrepreneurs who've been there, done that, right? And then for the rest, hire really good people for the team and get out of their way. I guess that's what happens because that's why you're entrepreneur. You build it, but then somebody else helps you run it. Because what I found my core strength is that my core strength is that I'm a good maybe co-founder and entrepreneur, but I'm not necessarily the best person to run the business. The entrepreneur founder doesn't have to be the same person who is the manager of the business. And for me, I find
Mhm.
that if for me to be nimble, for me to be agile, to think these ways, I have to stay within that box of the entrepreneurial mindset rather than being the day-to-day manager mindset because um, I don't think I can be good at both.
Mhm.
So when I talk about leadership, it's understanding also what are your strengths and what are your limitations. And for me, I find that I am best suited sort of to be the business development type or innovation. But for the running the company, it's really like I have partners in my Mercado Central. That's my wife who's very good at managing the company in terms of
Mhm.
finance and operations. In Enter PH, it's my lawyer partner who runs the business.
Mhm.
In Easy Franchise, it is my co-startup founder who came from the startup industry who's running that business as well. So I think that's one way to appreciate it that as a good leader, a good founder doesn't necessarily mean you're a good leader, but at the same time, you know where you belong in the organization once it's put up.
And that's really great that you actually highlighted that as a leader you have to know what are your strengths, what are your weakness, for you to be able to step back when you have to, right? And also to step up when you have to as well, right? I mean, like you've mentioned that despite you're very good in several things, in a lot of things actually, like ideation, problem solving, building network and all those stuff, but sometimes there are things or there are businesses that you have to give to your partners to actually manage because that's their strengths, right? And
That's it,
that's what
exactly.
leadership is, right? I mean, to be able to know what your strengths are, to be able to leverage on that, and to be able to leverage to somebody else's strengths as well as your partner or your team, right? Because at the end of the day, like when you're running a business or you're in a business work, even working in a or in an organization, right? It's really all about leveraging on each other's strengths, right?
Exactly,
and
exactly.
and that actually would lead me to the next question, like, so from your experience, you've been a corporate leader in Procter and Gamble, as you've shared, but most of the time you were doing entrepreneurial work or your own businesses, right? So what would you say would be the top problems that both corporate leaders and entrepreneurs would face, if you can give at least top three problems that they
No, I mean,
normally face?
uh, more not. I guess the issues really is that is number one is that when businesses, I guess, need to scale, it's a
Mm-hmm.
different set of competencies which require you from 1 to 10 from 10 to 100, right?
Right.
And so even the organization needs to evolve a bit differently, meaning that it's part of the process, and
Mhm.
it's really setting it up. And I don't say I have all the answers, but from that, that's one, I think that's one thing that's going to be a challenge as organizations grow.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
Mercado Central is still a medium scale organization, and as we scale forward, we're realizing that it's different skill sets, which lead to the next question, is that it's really building that professional team, a really great team, um, that who can help you build the business, because it's hard, when you start off as a micro business and you grow, maybe the
Mhm.
skill sets of the current team might not be up to par with growing into another size. So it's really finding a great team for you to be able to run a business. And number
Mhm.
three, I mean, as you get bigger, the idea is that how can you still be nimble enough or agile enough to continue solving pain points that smaller businesses have, because you know what, like I said, disruption is the new normal when it comes to business. So as you grow, there's always somebody else who's hungrier than you, right below you, who's competition, who wants to take over your place. So you're growing, but at the same time, there's somebody below you who's trying to disrupt you. So your job is, how do you stay agile and nimble despite this competition? So having said that, no, how do you continue to develop what we call your sustainable competitive advantage, to stay there on top, or to
Mhm.
at least stay in the running, right? Because if you don't have that sustainable competitive advantage, all that hard work to scale might just drop again, because
Mhm.
somebody else overtakes you.
Yeah, and that's true. And it's interesting, like in one of the talks that I've heard yesterday from Francis Kong, is that nowadays, just to be in position or just to stay where you are, you have to run faster.
Exactly, exactly.
So that really encapsulates like what you just also said, right? You always have to be on the look for what's next, right? And again, in my introduction earlier, I made mention about um how can you stay relevant, right? And that's what you've also made mention earlier, right? And I really appreciate that you made mention that we have to generally keep on learning and continuously improve, right? Because again, like what you've mentioned, the competencies or the skill sets required for us to scale a business, to grow a business, is different, right? From each phase that we actually run our business, right? And that's a common problem, especially for entrepreneurs, I would say,
Oh,
right?
because sometimes you continue to run it like and I'm not saying I'm better than everybody else, but sometimes there are companies that are so big already, but still being run like a mom and pop operation. It's going to eventually, there's going to be something's going to falter along the way. So you know what, it's really building, I guess, building for growth, and that's what's key, I guess, for many companies as well. And it's difficult because I can appreciate the entrepreneur put up the business himself, parang blood, sweat, tears, di ba? Then to give it to other people to run it, it's not easy. It's not easy to
True.
say somebody else run it, even if you don't have the skill sets to run it to that size.
Exactly. And sometimes we get attached to it, like especially if you're quite emotional or quite attached to the business that you have actually built, right? I mean, that's generally part of the life that
No,
we have.
and I come from a family business, so I understand exactly the emotions of this one. I know, from my late dad. I mean, but I understand, these are the concerns that they have, and that's why, the most important thing to do is, especially if you come from that background, is the learning that you generate from how they did it, and say, let's do it better. Let's find a way to do it better.
Exactly. And that's what you've also mentioned earlier, where you have to disrupt, you have to pivot, you have to change things sometimes, right? And that's part of it. I mean, especially now that we're moving into a different era where, like, everything is happening fast, and a lot of things are different from the way things are done before, right? Even the market is evolving. And so we really have to find ways to be able to cope up and to stay relevant, having said that, right? And I really appreciate, I mean, I think this is one of the top that I always hear from most people that I interview as well, is really finding a great team for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially for, I think, for entrepreneurs like us, where of course there's like so much competition. We, like, especially if we don't have that much like resources yet, right? And
Yes,
we
exactly, exactly.
fight with like bigger companies in terms of compensation and benefits. Well, I mean, it doesn't mean that everything is just about compensation and benefits, but I mean that's basically part of it. People are working to be able to be compensated, right, at the end of the day.
Exactly,
So
exactly. Wow.
and again, the last one that you mentioned is actually staying nimble, right? And we have to be faster than we used to be, right? In especially in running a business today, and of course, from your experience, sharing all these top problems, of course we don't want to leave them with just those problems, and we wanted to help them. So what important leadership capabilities and skills that they must have in order to continue to lead more effectively?
Yeah.
And based on your experience, how would you relate it in your own experiences, in your own story?
I guess more my sharing would be more of how to be a great entrepreneur leader, I guess, because
Mm-hmm,
leading the organization is more of the vision that you put together. But
mm-hmm,
again, this assumes that you've got a great team to be able to roll it out for you, right?
mm-hmm,
And then the first one is I keep on saying that what's the entrepreneurial mindset, right? Uh,
mm-hmm,
I keep on describing this one because I think it's important for people to realize what I mean to be an entrepreneur. Like
mm-hmm,
the entrepreneurial mindset just means that it's like looking at the world always from a new angle or a new perspective, right? It's always saying that what are the new opportunities present? What can I do differently? I know in an interview yesterday, I shared this, or the talk yesterday that I gave, I shared this
mm-hmm,
one that you know what, when a regular person travels abroad, he will come back with pictures to share with
mm-hmm,
people. When an entrepreneur travels abroad and he comes back, he's saying, "These are the new business ideas I thought of over there that I got, and then I want to implement it over here." Right? So that's how an entrepreneur is like. He's always on the search for what are the opportunities that he can continuously generate, and
mm-hmm.
that's why his mind is always racing every time to see what are the new opportunities out there. He's always out there looking for something. No? And I say that one because that's the first thing I want people to have is that as a good leader, especially if you, as an entrepreneur, you're out there to always keep on your entrepreneurial lens. This is what I call the
Mhm,
lens of opportunity. To find, um, I tell people about what's the entrepreneurial lens.
mhm,
In a simple way, it's like saying, like I keep on describing COVID, right? COVID was scary, but when COVID was scary, you were saying, it's scary because there's a lockdown. It's scary because there's social distancing. But if you
mhm,
wear your entrepreneurial lens, what are you seeing? What you're seeing is that what is the business opportunity created by social distancing, or what is the business
mhm,
opportunity created by the lockdown? So your job as an entrepreneur is not to feel bad, but your job is not to say, "Oh, the situation is good," or "COVID is good, COVID is bad." Your job was to say, "What are the business opportunities emerging now as a result of this bad situation?" Right? And
mhm,
and in the Philippines, I was mentioning there are so many great entrepreneurs who emerged as a result of the COVID. I mean, it doesn't sound good, but sometimes that really became the accelerator for growth of some businesses. So again, it's always keeping
exactly.
that entrepreneurial mindset, trying to discover problems or pain points.
Mhm,
And your job is to solve pain points that nobody saw clearly or that nobody has solved well enough. So that's the first thing that you want to start off as an
mhm,
entrepreneur leader. And the second thing as an entrepreneur leader is that, the idea is that, okay, you can think of a good idea or a good problem to solve, but if you just think about it in your head and you don't go about it, don't solve it, it's just homework, it's just a thesis, right? And that's why for
mhm,
me it's always important to build my network of resources and my network of people because I need to get things done. Let's say, for example, once you've got a good idea, where will I get the capital? Where will I get the expertise? Where will I get this one? But if you've got a network of contacts, then you'll be able to much it's more fluid, or you're more agile in putting all these ideas together. Then if you've got
mhm,
good communication skills, you can immediately communicate that idea, then you bring partners on board. That's exactly what I did for my two businesses. It was just
mhm,
what I call the Philippines your lawa, your saliva is your equity, right? You're putting the business together in the first place. So you implement the business right now, and to implement the business, what the entrepreneur leader has to have is a lot of hustle. He's out there the whole time, and the
mhm.
hustling is a bit more. You have to be very hungry for opportunity every time.
True.
I often compare it to me. Let's say, I used to work in the corporate world, and the corporate world, you wait for a 15-30, right? For when they pay you, and you start to become comfortable in that. Eventually, if you stay long enough in a company, people get what they call golden handcuffs, right? You can't leave
Mhm,
because you know that you're getting this much benefit, but you can't venture out into the entrepreneurial world. I chose to leave that world. Difficult to leave that world of a career in a stable job. But when I did, it helped me develop a more, what I call, it's like a very hunger related mentality that whatever opportunities out there, I gotta grab it, I gotta grab it, I gotta grab whatever is out there to do. So up to now, I'm still the same way when it comes to everything. I'm always looking out for the no opportunity is too small for me to ignore or too big for me to say no to, because I'm out there looking for, I'll fight it out to get a hosting job. I'll fight it out to get a speaking job. Why? Because that's part of the DNA of what it's like to be an entrepreneur who knows the hustle, right?
Mhm.
Same way like startup companies which have, let's say, $1 million or even pesos to start off their company. Some of them it's bootstrapping them out of their own pocket, and some coming from angel investors, and they need to make that work over 6 months. And then while they're trying to make the app work, they're trying to get clients, they're trying to get investors, and they're just eating ramen noodles at instant noodles at night because they've got nothing else. But then that's the sort of hustle that they need for
Mhm.
entrepreneur founders. And then the last one I often tell them is that how they have to view failure, particularly like in the Philippine culture. Failure is frowned upon. Whatever failure that you have, it's like they want you to feel. When you fail in a business, they want you to feel like you failed in life. I mean, sometimes that's how
Mhm.
some people feel. But then I realized right now that all great entrepreneurs were built on failure. There's no great entrepreneur right now who hasn't failed in the past. And I'm not saying I'm a great example of failure. I mean, I failed in my businesses before in the past. I can't. I won't lie and say that it was easy. No, it was hard. I cried. I felt bad. I couldn't sleep. But that's how it's like, right? But what do?
Mhm.
Eventually, you fail fast. They often say that just fail forward, meaning what did you learn from the failure? Then just get up again and just do it again. Do it again. It's not easy, but that's the mentality, because in the end, failure is just part of what we call the growth mindset. I'll
Mhm.
fail right now, but that's okay. Eventually, I'll learn my lesson and I'll do better the next time. But the thing is, if you don't learn your lesson, you get you coop your up, you kind of shy away from doing it again because you failed in the past. Then the lesson wasn't learned. So those are the three things, right? The first one is the entrep mindset. Number two is the hustle mindset. And number three is the failure mindset. It's a growth
Mhm.
mindset versus failure.
Mhm. Wow, thank you for explaining and even sharing with us like some examples of what you mean by this, and even the experience that you had in doing so, right? I mean, like it's interesting, like when you've mentioned how entrepreneurial mindset, and I would say that even like bigger companies are now actually looking at entrepreneurial or intrapreneur mindset.
Intrapreneur, exactly.
Yeah, entrepreneur mindset within their organization. And I remembered similar conversation I had um, with Juma Boy Anwar, if I remember it correctly. Like one of the persons I've interviewed from Malaysia, and this is what he actually does quite a lot now with like bigger companies in terms of how do you actually look at uh, the entrepreneurial mindset or in your organization. How can it help you, because it actually builds ownership as well, right?
Exactly.
um, for those people that you work with, right? And I really love the perspective that you've shared around like looking at things in different ways or different perspectives, and that's how it is, right? When you're actually an entrepreneur. um, and the other one that you've mentioned is looking at failure differently. And I remembered like this is one of the top, I would say, like takeaways that most attendees have also shared, is that view failure as a badge of honor.
Yeah,
That's what you said in your session
yeah, yeah.
in the other day with our.
You know that comes from for me. So before I put up a market before in Cagayan de Oro. We tried it out one of our first markets out of town from
Mhm,
Metro Manila. We put up
mhm,
a mercato over there.
mhm,
And then a couple of years later, I was asked to be an ambassador for a telecom brand, right?
mhm,
And then
mhm,
when I was made ambassador, somebody wrote there, "Why did you get RJ to be your ambassador? He put up a
mhm,
mercato here in Cagayan de Oro and it failed."
mhm,
Parang,
mhm,
so I realized that person doesn't have the the entrepreneur mentality, because he wants me to feel that, oh, he failed, so therefore he should not be a good example of
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship. But,
Mm-hmm.
but the other way to look at it is that that's the best example of an entrepreneur. They failed and
Mm-hmm.
they got up again and learned the lesson from that.
Exactly. And that's how it is, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur or a business owner or even just a person, right? That's
Exactly.
actually something that we have to do, right? It's always like going up or standing up again one more time, right? Um, and oh, I just have comment here. I just want to acknowledge, by the way, Mohammed Ali Malik. I have interviewed him as well. He's from Pakistan and also from another FMCG um, company.
Hi,
Um,
Mohammed.
and and he said that looking the world differently, in a different perspective, and that's how entrepreneurship is. So this is,
Exactly.
I would say, his takeaway from what you just shared earlier, like looking at things in a different perspective, right? And that's what entrepreneurial mindset is, right? So yeah, so again, like even in organizations, I would say, like being able to look at the failures as learning lessons, and for them to be able to make use of that to improve like
Exactly.
processes and
And how do you build in failure? Like, where's your acceptable level of failure? I mean, there's accountability, but there's still the room to fail, because if not, then all your employees are going to be walking on eggshells and they don't want to experiment after some point. And, you know, but some
exactly. And
but sometimes
that's
some of the best things come from experiments, right?
exactly. And that's how you also build psychological safety within our organizations. If like people make mistakes, failures, and you question them, and you whack them for doing so, right? Then they
Oh,
will be afraid to give like their perspectives, their ideas
exactly,
anymore, right? So
exactly.
that's how you have to accept failures, mistakes within the organization, and that's how also you can build a psychological safety within organizations, right?
Yeah.
It's really like welcoming all those mistakes and failures that it's something natural
Yeah.
if
Oh,
I may
Bless
say, like in
Paluyo
life.
here. Hi, Bless. Thanks so much for listening. She says, RJ, thank you for all that you do. Very inspiring. Thanks so much for listening, Bless Baluyo. And I wanted to add to you, I wanted to also add a couple of things, especially about failure. Let's say, for example, in many startup companies, right, when they come
Mhm,
up with a minimum viable product, they
mhm,
let's say put an app online. I mean, it's
mhm.
not yet the complete app, right? Basically, it's just a few features lang there, because they want to see how people react to it, what's going to do good, what's going to do bad. And so actually, they're saying that failure is built into that option of putting that model together. So eventually, they'll come up with something that's going to work. But if you come up
Exactly.
with a full blown app, you put all your resources over there, the full blown app, then you put it out and it doesn't work, then you feel bad,
And
because you didn't allow the failure to be built in as you were growing it, right? Or in
yeah.
coming up with that app in the first place.
Exactly. That's what have Jonathan shared. Jonathan is in software as well. In his talk yesterday, he made mention about it, and that's where like agility actually came from, right? It used to be like mostly attached for softwares, technology, projects, and all those stuff. But in fact, it actually applies in like everyday life and everything that you do, especially as an entrepreneur, right? To have that agility is to be able to learn from those mistakes, to experiment, to try things, because without those models that you actually like test, then like what you've said, like oops, right, you've spent a lot of time, you spent a lot of money, resources, and everything, and then in the end it's not even like viable for you to sell it or for people to make use of it, right? So it just doesn't make sense anyway. Right.
And I think the best way to encapsulate that example of failure, that is a mindset
Mhm,
or a perspective, is like I was
mhm,
sharing in my talk the other day, is that,
mhm,
I one time had a chance to moderate a discussion of the
mhm,
$1 million round table uh, insurance people, advisors, right?
mhm,
The million
mhm,
dollar round table is basically those people who've sold $1 million worth of policies in 1 year, right? So they're
mhm.
all they're all given special treatment. They're brought to travel abroad, right? And enjoy
Yes.
those and enjoy, right? So I was so amazed by that idea that these people were like, these people walk
Mhm,
on water, right? So they must
mhm,
have magic
mhm.
words coming out of their mouth. when they convince people to get their policy. So I was asking them when I was interviewing them. I was asking them, what are the magic words that come out of your mouth so that you get people to say yes to you every time you offer a policy? And interestingly enough, the answer that they gave me was that, you know what, people still say no to us up to now. But when they say no to us, I don't feel like it's my loss. Rather, I feel that it's their loss. You know why it's their loss? Because I'm giving them something that's good for them and changes their life for the better, but I don't want to accept it. Then it's not my loss, it's actually their loss. But they've
Mhm,
given me something in return. And what they
mhm,
give me in return is that they taught me another way that people will reject me or say no to me. So in effect, in the future, I can store that in my memory bank and then find different ways when I approach a person with the same sort of objection. I know now
mhm.
how to approach that person and respond properly.
Exactly. And again, it's all about perspective and how you will handle those objectives, right? Because the more you know how to handle objectives, the more you can handle every difficulties that you face in life or at work, right? Ang
Ayan.
galing mo
Ay,
talaga.
salamat Miss Bless. Salamat sa pakikinig ha.
Thank you, Miss Bless, for joining us and for supporting us in this conversation as usual. And yeah, so that leads me to my last question. As much as I am enjoying this conversation a lot, I'm seeing quite a number of live audience from our LinkedIn. I'm not sure
Oh, great.
because I normally see it uh, from my view in StreamYard unless I go to LinkedIn. So hello to those who are watching
Hello.
us.
I also want to
And
greet all my fellow top 100 in LinkedIn, top 100 Filipinos in LinkedIn as well. Thanks so much for listening in. Like Miss
yeah,
Bless, one of my fellow top 100 in LinkedIn as well.
exactly. And that's how I get to know Bless as well. I'm part of the 100 most influential women on LinkedIn.
Fantastic
And
job.
I was nominated again. Thank you so much for all the people who trusted me and who've nominated me. And tomorrow, the, the announcement will be will be given for the top 100 Filipinos on LinkedIn this 2023. So I'm
That's
super
great.
excited. They will be sharing that, so like make sure to watch that as well. For those who are especially active on LinkedIn, to join us in that conversation, right, Miss Bless? So yeah, so that leads me to my last question. That
Yes.
um and this is a very open and interesting question, I would say. If you have a magic wand that you can use, what will you do with it?
I think that that's the thing. I actually have my own podcast and I ask those same questions from people in a similar vein. I often tell people, what management hack would you have taught yourself um, if you could go back in time and you talk to your
Mhm,
previous self? What would you share with him not to do? But this is the one thing
mhm,
I realized who I am here today as a businessman or as an entrepreneur is the
mhm,
result of all the failures in the past that I've
mhm.
created. Diba? I wouldn't get to where I am here right now if I didn't undergo all those failures in the past. So with
Exactly.
the magic wand actually becomes a crutch to you because you're thinking, I could have done this differently before, but you realize all of a sudden, okay, that's okay, the magic wand is more is it's not what it actually worth, right? So the idea is that it's just the learning from the experience that's what's key
Mhm,
over here.
mhm,
You
mhm,
know,
mhm,
um, uh, I think that's the bigger point for me here right now.
mhm,
You're learning every day. But what for me is very important as a leader is that you have to, like, for me it's very important. I continue to look for mentorship, keep my mind open to mentorship, and to always stay humble and grounded in whatever I do. That if you've achieved anything in the past, don't let
mhm.
it go to your head because there's always somebody next who's going to want to want to want to move up. So it becomes just an ego massage to win an award, but more like it's a nice recognition. Now, what do you do with
Mhm.
it? You use it as an opportunity to create connections, to meet more people. But that's really what you're
Exactly.
doing. And like for me, staying humble allows me to connect with more people and to grow my business and to grow my network. And in the end, diba, I think what's very important is that all of us um, find businesses that for us are have a why to you. Like what Simon Sinek says, right? Start with why. And for the why is this business meaningful and relevant to you to do in the first place. Like for me, I know the meaningfulness and relevance of my business, Mercato and Enter
Mhm.
PH and Easy Franchise, uh, to me and also to other people at the same time. So for me, it's business is just another means for me to serve other people the best way I know how. Because if I serve other people, I'm also uh, serving God at the same time.
Wow, thank you so much for that final message that you've shared with us. And again, it's very important reminder for every one of us to continue to improve ourselves, to learn from the experiences, because sometimes we don't see that when we're in the situation where, failure is so painful, when we're having like a lot of problems and we don't want what we have now, right? It's
Yes,
I say that it's really so much of being grateful about it, learning from those experiences that we're having right now. I know it's difficult, especially in when you're in that situation, but always look for that silver lining, right? Or the opportunities that comes in with those problems, right? And again, like
exactly.
what you have said, look for mentors or mentorship, stay humble and grounded, because sometimes we tend to forget that when we are in the level where we wanted to be as well. So thank you so much for those amazing reminders that you have shared. Is there anything more that you'd like to leave our audience with before we
Well,
end
I
this
well,
conversation?
I just appreciate it. If you like what I have to, what I've talked about, please do share my talk, the insights you've gained online. You can also follow me on RJ Ledesma on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I'd
Mhm.
appreciate that. At the same time, I also have my own podcast, the RJ Ledesma podcast. Interviewed a lot of great leaders, talked to them about their business and entrepreneurship insights and their
Mhm.
careers. I got a lot of success secrets from them. So if you can listen to my podcast, it's RJ Ledesma Podcast on Facebook. It's also on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. Would appreciate
Mhm.
if you guys can give it a listen. And also to follow rjledesma.com. If you're looking for a motivational speaker, inspirational speaker, or a host for your events, please let me know. Hit me up. Love to talk to you. Love to collaborate.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. And please help us by indicating also all the links where we can actually find you. But again, we appreciate it's very simple, RJ Ledesma. So you can just follow him from almost all the social media network as well, right? Other than your podcast. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing all the work that you have done, the inspiration that you have shared with us today. It's very motivating. It's very inspiring, especially for entrepreneurs like me as well. So I really appreciate all the things that you have reminded me today, as well as our audience as well. So thank you so much for the work that you do. And
Thank you for
again,
this. Thank you for the privilege of appearing on the show. Really appreciate it.
thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor for me and a pleasure for me to have you in this show. And again, I would like to thank our audience as well, especially those who are watching us live from the different social medias on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And for those who will be watching us on a replay, feel free to let us know if you have any additional questions for RJ, or yeah, let us know if how we can help you. I mean, I can flash as well my contact details um, here. And of course, let's work together to find how we can actually create a better world to live in, because we can. And remember that even the richest investors in the world would say that investing in yourself is the best investment you can ever make in your life. And with that, we would like to leave you with this quote that if your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. Thank you, RJ, for being our
Ako.
excellent leader today. Have a good day,
Thank you.
everyone, and see you
Thanks,
next.
guys. Take care.
Bye for now.